Bem, so Glenn, I'm going to take questions from the audience. I presume there will be a lot of questions that will ask you to clarify some points. I must confess that I'm a little bit confused, and so I want you to
So
I have many questions myself.
Wonderful.
But I'll let you.
One
One
thing I want to say that's important to me is one thing I've noticed, especially in Latin America. It's also true in the U.S., but especially in Latin America. Many of the best questions I get are from women, people from indigenous communities, people from African communities who do not always feel empowered within this context to ask questions. And I often hear questions from them then later in private. Everyone needs to hear your voices in this context. It's so important to hear your voices in this context. So please take the initiative to ask a question. And if you don't, after a couple questions, I will just wait until I get a question from someone who's not from exactly the standard demographic, because I think this is so important.
Okay, who's first? The young guy in the first row, then...
Olá, Glenn. Obrigado, Fundação. Sempre
You will
ótimos
need
debates.
translation,
Yeah,
so
I can hear it.
wait a little minute.
No, it's fine. I can hear it.
Bom, meu nome é Felipe, eu trabalho com blockchain há um certo tempo e ver essa palestra na Fundação do Fernando Henrique Cardoso, que eu acompanho há tempos, isso é um passo enorme para essa ideia, que acompanho há muito tempo. É bem complexo entender, gera dúvidas nas pessoas, mas, gente, é complexo, porque blockchain, em geral, assim, a tecnologia é uma coisa complexa. Mas quando vocês começam a entender pelo menos os princípios básicos, vocês veem, nossa, isso é possível. E eu já vi projetos em escala pequena funcionando perfeitamente, provando que isso é possível. E eu acredito que a minha geração vai construir isso com muito prazer para resolver esses problemas complexos. Então, parabenizo a palestra. E eu vou fazer uma pergunta que é um desafio para mim e eu acho que é um desafio para você também. Eu queria como traduzir isso, sintetizar isso de uma forma mais clara para as pessoas. Isso é um desafio que eu até hoje me pergunto. E eu sempre estou fazendo esse trabalho para tentar sintetizar. Como vocês andam trabalhando isso? Agora, um livro já eu acho um grande passo também, nesse sentido. Qual o passo, qual o trabalho nesse sentido? Obrigado.
Can
thank you.
We take other questions. And
Let me write it down.
Yeah, okay.
Olá, Marcelo Rosenfeld. Eu queria que você falasse mais do quadratic voting, que eu confesso que não entendi. E se tem um pouquinho que eu entendi, o que eu imaginei é uma coisa parecida com um jogo de tabuleiro, onde recebemos fichas no começo e distribuímos na tomada de decisões um pouco de cada ficha. Então eu queria entender quem é que atribui esses créditos, de que maneira eles são divididos de forma igual ou desigual, num exemplo prático, se possível, concreto. Obrigado.
Mais uma questão aqui. Vai dar tempo para todo mundo.
Contributing to this question that was just made there, I mean, who's going to run this platform? And in terms of voting, and you were talking about those credits that you can assign on voting, who's going to receive those credits? Who's going to distribute those credits? Who's going to run the platform? And wouldn't this cause people that has no access to technology to be excluded from this democratic process?
Who else?
From now, I want a woman or someone from a historically underrepresented group for the next question.
Well,
and I'm going to wait on that. Different.
They're free to ask. They're free to ask questions or not. I mean, right?
No, but I think it's very important to encourage people.
I have a question, but I'm not a woman. I'm white.
I'll take a question for you, but then,
Heterosexual,
oh,
well,
there's a gentleman back there
Okay, go
that
ahead.
would like to ask.
Boa tarde, meu nome é Tiago, sou da RAPS. Eu quero agradecer à Fundação FHC por proporcionar um debate tão bom e obrigado também por essa postura. Inclusive, eu estou até com vergonha.
Não tenha vergonha alguma, não tenha vergonha alguma.
Porque é a primeira vez que eu vejo um negócio desse, um espetáculo.
Eu também.
Né? Uma coisa inédita. Agora, na linha dessa questão do blockchain, a gente também tem que pensar no clima das pessoas. E o clima é de polarização e de enfrentamento, onde nós não temos um clima de cooperação e onde o individualismo fala mais alto. Então, eu queria entender qual é a estratégia para a aplicação da estratégia que o senhor propõe dentro deste clima polarizado, esquisito e negativo que a gente vive não só no Brasil, mas em outros países do mundo.
Of course.
Por favor.
Of course.
Yeah.
We are not talking about blockchain here. We are talking about this is philosophy, politics. So I really don't get why only questions about blockchain. Because blockchain nowadays is, I'm a lawyer, but everybody uses blockchain nowadays, even lawyers. Yeah, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but for me, this is philosophy. And economics is philosophy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shall I answer some questions now?
Of course.
Yeah. Okay,
Feel
great.
free to do so.
So let me start first with a half-hearted apology for being maybe a little bit advanced in some of the things I talked about. But I think what's important to say is, look, let me in one sentence, you asked me for a clear version, one sentence say what the point of this is. The point of this is corporations are exploitative and for profit. We all know this. They do not serve the interests of the people that they're supposed to serve. They serve the profits of the people that invest in them. And this is a frustration for entrepreneurs even. You have to go raise money, make your product crap just to monetize it, rather than to serve the people that you set out to serve. One, nation states are rigid. They have been there for 200 years. Most of the time, some colonialists drew the lines on the map. What the heck does that have to do with anything? It's not a solution. We need things that are democratically responsive, the way that a nation state is, and that are emergent and created for the purpose at hand, the way that entrepreneurship is. That is what we need in this world, period. Now, everything else, this is a bunch of very detailed mathematics developed over many years to get the answer to that question technically right. That's a very hard thing to do. And yes, it's a little complicated when you go through it all. I think we can make it clearer. I think we can make it better. I'm working on it. It takes a while. But that is what we were trying to achieve. To answer that basic point, I don't think that should be unclear to anyone. I think it's common sense. The question is, can we do it technically right? And I think we're making huge progress on that. Okay, so that's the simple version of it that I would put down. What the heck does that have to do with blockchain or anything like that? The answer, in my mind, is I don't think blockchain is the right technology. I think there are fundamental things that are wrong with the blockchain technology. We can talk about that. I'm happy to elaborate on it. But there are people out there with the vision to say, we are willing to experiment, we are willing to build technology, we're willing to build systems that can be a basis for making it possible, as you mentioned, for many people to participate in these new, emergent, responsive democratic systems that don't exclude people. That's what people want. And you can call it blockchain, you can call it whatever you want. That is the goal. That is what excites people. That is what gets young people, like the gentleman who first spoke, correct me if I'm wrong, excited about working on these things. And blockchain is a stand-in for it. You know, the way I say to people is, you think about the temple in Jerusalem in 600 BC. Was this a good technology for making it rain? Probably not. Or at least most of us don't think that today. Was this a good technology for building a Jewish civilization that gave us Albert Einstein, Karl Marx, and Sigmund Freud? Yes. And that's the way I think about blockchain. It is something that inspired people with the vision of it being possible for us to build better institutions. Were they exactly the right technology? No. And Vitalik Buterin, many people acknowledge this. That's why they're working with us on improving it and to building something more substantial based on it with the right philosophy that actually works. But that energy is of incredible value, and it's an energy we need to harness as a society. Quadratic voting. Quadratic voting is a system where it can work in many different ways, but a basic example is you have a survey, encuesta, right, is something you call it here. You run this survey, everyone gets 100 points to allocate on the issues that are most important to them. This has been done with people with no education in the inner slums in Latin America. My wife did it very successfully. And they can put more votes on the things that are most important to them and that they know most about. And these are things that touch their lives more. And this gives people the chance to speak democratically about the things that matter to them. You know, a lot of people like to condescendingly say the people can't speak on issues. I say that's nonsense. I can't speak on many issues. You know, in my city, Hoboken, New Jersey, people run for office. I don't know who these people are. My neighbors who've lived there for years, they know. They should be the ones who speak to that. I should maybe speak to how we design the fundamental rules of the game. I know a lot about that. I have something to say about that. I don't have anything to say about most political issues. So each of us is called in different ways to speak to our communities. Quadratic voting gives us the chance to say, yes, on this I know. On this I care. On the other things, less. And it's just a technical thing for that. And does it sound a little abstract? Does it sound a little wonky? How did the internet sound in 1991? Those who were around. Did that sound like something exciting? Were those little bulletin boards fun? No, it takes a little while to develop it. It takes a little while to make people see how powerful it is. But the technology is revolutionary. And that's what's exciting, I think. Who's going to run this platform? Ideally, we don't want it to be run by any centralized thing. We don't want it to be run by someone. We want it to be emergent from the communities. And that's the sort of thing that technologies like blockchain, I don't think blockchain is exactly right, but like blockchain empower. That's what's so exciting about them. Coming back to the gentleman's question in the back, look, fundamentally, I think technology is not enough. I talked all about technology. It's very exciting. It's not enough. We need a praxis, the way we live to mirror the values that we have. That is why I asked for inclusion. And it's not just I asked for inclusion here. We had a conference in Detroit, 51% women speakers, 48% speakers of color. That is how you live the values you have, and that's not enough. That's just a start because we didn't have enough people from the global south. We didn't have enough people from rural communities. We left out much, but we made steps. We made steps to say we're going to live what we say. And by living what we say, and by including, by the way, not just people across racial boundaries, not just people across gender boundaries, we include libertarians. And we include anarcho-syndicalists. We include technocrats. And we include leftists. We have to have all those people involved and being inspired by the potential here to break down that thing and to actually build up the world we want to see, not bring it from the top down. So that's how we make real change. More questions?
Another round of questions. Wow. We have two women and two men.
Wonderful. Great.
And another,
And then this gentleman here as well.
And then, well, I'm old school. Ladies
Yeah,
first.
yeah, please.
Yeah. Levante a mão quem quer falar.
Bom, obrigada a quem me cedeu a vez, mas não por ser mulher, mas porque pela minha ansiedade. A sua última explanação é que me fez levantar a mão. Meu nome é Ana Maria, eu sou educadora, eu sou professora. Eu acho que eu sou meio um patinho feio aqui no meio pessoal da economia. E duas frases suas me chamaram a atenção. Você disse, logo terminando a sua fala, que nós precisamos domar as ondas de crescimento do capitalismo. Né? É uma frase que, para o educador, isso é maravilhoso. E depois, na sequência, você disse que nós precisamos construir comunidades empreendedoras. Tá? E eu trabalho muito trabalhei na rede pública de ensino, como professora do Estado, me aposentei, trabalhei com ensino profissionalizante, e hoje eu presto consultoria e trabalho muito com jovens em situação de risco. E nesse ambiente, eu entro em contato com as questões econômicas desses jovens, das famílias e das próprias comunidades. E quando você falou de comunidades empreendedoras, eu lembrei de uma outra expressão que circulou aqui no país, mas acho que especificamente aqui em São Paulo, das cidades educadoras, que era um conceito maravilhoso. Eu lembro que a Prefeitura de São Paulo, na época, coisa aí de uns 15 anos atrás, 10 anos atrás, foi até a Europa e buscou trabalhar o conceito e não avançou. Como você definiria a sua proposta de comunidades empreendedoras? Isso me chamou a atenção, acho que é um conceito interessante.
Muito bom. Mais perguntas. Temos que ser um pouquinho mais ligeiros aqui no processo.
Hi, Glenn. How you doing? So I'll try to make it short as I can. There's a generation, you belong to a generation of new economists who are, gaining the world's attention by reading the problems that are affecting the system as a whole. So people like Shoshana Zuboff, you mentioned Paul Mason, and Piketty, and Eric Heinert, and all of them, they are really, intense readings about wrapping around the issues that are affecting the system. But what are you trying to do? You're trying to propose something to build a think tank or organization that can elicit those policies. But to me, still is easier to, because in all of those texts that I quoted, they still rely on the point that capitalism, some of Marxist teleology that capitalism might fail by its own failures, intern failures, and it's easier for me to imagine that it will be beaten by that, say by work and by capital and work coming so much detached from each other that the system will collapse. Like, say, this is some of the perspective that you see in some of those books. It's easier for me to see something like that happening than something like what you're proposing to be built. So the question is really simple. Can it work on an MVP model, like a minimal viable prototype model, or does it require a systematic change that enhances sorts of parties and all of state instances that we know that are really hard to reach? And are there any examples?
Yeah.
Ok. Quem mais? Tá ficando difícil. Tem uma super oferta de perguntas. Eu vou ter que...
There was a second woman I thought that you had mentioned.
There are many women.
Great.
So, no, you're allowed to...
Thanks. Hi, Glenn. I'm going to speak Portuguese.
Okay.
Nós temos O movimento aqui, ele me parece que ele é anticapitalista, eu vejo que é uma crítica ao capitalismo, mas você mesmo disse também que você é totalmente contra o estadismo. Só que ele usa algumas palavras que eu tenho a impressão que podem ter um viés mais comunista, ou então, assim, algumas ideias. Como é que, assim, para eu explicar para alguém, olha, veja, isso é totalmente diferente de comunismo. Me explica rapidamente como você set apart from communism.
Eu vou ter que ter uma atitude, assim, digamos, soviética. Eu vou ter que eu vou ter que racionar, porque de fato nós temos um problema. Nós temos mais uns 15 minutos, então eu vou aleatoriamente passar aqui. Eu vou pedir 1000 desculpas, beijos, mas não vai dar.
Meu nome é
União Soviética com um certo carinho, assim, exatamente.
Meu nome é Ortélio Palácio, eu sou de nacionalidade colombiana, mas moro no Brasil há 25 anos e trabalho para uma organização sindical no âmbito internacional, Força Sindical. Agradecer à Fundação por essa oportunidade, é uma excelente palestra, mas eu entendo que você está falando, e não tenho dúvida, que o sistema tem uma crise profunda. Concordo com você, da política e economia é um desastre, como pretendem trabalhar separadamente coisas que não funcionam. Estou plenamente de acordo. Agora, quando você fala, entendo que aqueles votos que você apresentou, uma forma de democracia representativa, talvez seja, já no Brasil parece que está funcionando de forma desastrosa, porque esse governo atual ele está governando praticamente via redes sociais, em onde já tem uma série de pessoas que, seja voto ou não, dão opinião e o governo tenta agir como tal daquelas opiniões daqueles grupos qualificados, que normalmente são um grupo que divide e que praticamente gera divisão profunda entre a própria sociedade. Então, eu gostaria de falar que você pudesse explicar um pouquinho mais essa ideia que você colocou sobre esses votos dessa democracia representativa. Muito obrigado.
Mais one more, and then
Lady back there.
you give in. Okay.
Yeah,
Very generous.
Lady back there. Yeah.
Boa noite. A minha pergunta, vou ser bem rápida, é o seguinte: quem vai fazer a governança ou vai ser dono, entre aspas, dessas informações? É um pouco na linha do que ele perguntou, né, de que essas informações que cada um individualmente vai dar, e que eu acho que é muito legal, é uma forma de participar, quem que vai ser o dono disso, né? Porque hoje cada vez mais essas informações são concentradas e têm um uso.
Absolutely. Shall I go ahead and answer?
Yeah, the many, right? Go ahead.
Okay. So, to the First Lady, the first thing I wanted to say is, look, one reason I made my somewhat insistent welcome for a variety of people to speak is because while the economics profession may have made you feel like an ugly duckling, it's exactly the sort of your voices that are beautiful and that we need to hear. And I want you to know that we need more diverse voices, we need more people, and that the economics profession has been systematically excluding so many people for so long. So thank you for taking the time to speak. Absolutely, education is a critical example of a public good, a critical example of the sort of thing that we need more flexible and emergent funding for. I don't know the particular history in Brazil. I'd love to learn about it. It sounds very interesting and very relevant to me. I do hope that these sorts of systems can be used for education and a variety of other things as well. But thank you so much. So in terms of how I want to see this build up, absolutely. There are tons of startups around the world that are doing precisely this sort of thing. We have co-working spaces that are managing themselves according to these principles and that are succeeding and growing because of that. We have communities of barter that have internal currencies that are building community activities using these types of principles. We have to come to the problem about social media. We have things that are trying to get much higher quality social media by requiring people to actually put some stake in supporting things rather than just upvote or downvote that are based on these principles. So yes, there are many MVPs, and that is precisely what we want. We want, through a combination of art, through a combination of these experiments, through government experiments on small scales, for people to see how effective this is, and for things to grow up from the bottom up that way. Absolutely, 100%. But also, we want political experiments that way. We want small political actions that are built around the hope that even just things like antitrust policies, the right data regulations that are built around this vision, can do to build new political coalitions, to create new political conversations that break down the hate that pervades our society and that allow divisive figures like Jeremy Corbyn and Jair Bolsonaro to govern countries. How is this not communism? I think it depends what one means by communism, but what failed? It was putting a huge amount of power in the hands of Stalin. It was putting a huge amount of power in the hands of someone who has dictatorial control, and that is precisely what this destroys. This precisely destroys the ability of anyone to concentrate power, or of any single entity to have that control. And I think it's precisely by solving in a decentralized manner the problems of capitalism that we avoid the chance of that sort of concentration of power. This is a radically decentralized, radically libertarian, and in fact, we've got tons of libertarians involved in this process. I think one of the major leaders in the radical exchange movement in Brazil will be the livre movement. So they're not exactly communists. So we think we have an amazing opportunity to address the flaws in capitalism using decentralization of power. And I think that that's critical. And it's critical for the goals that the original communists had as well. Anarcho-syndicalism was all about decentralizing power. I welcome you from Colombia. I've lived in Colombia for 2 years, actually. So I love Colombia. I don't know where in Colombia you're from, but I lived in Bogota for 2 years, but I've traveled all over Colombia. And in fact, we're thinking possibly of holding the next global conference in Colombia. So very glad to have a Colombian here. Mucho gusto. If I knew that the translators spoke in Spanish, which I'm not sure, I would give you your answer in Spanish. But look, absolutely, current social media environment is terrible. It's incredibly destructive. It's one of the biggest problems we have. And one of the chapters of the book, I hope you'll read it, is on precisely addressing those sorts of problems. But I think that the way that we do that is precisely by returning the control of data. And this gets to the next question as well, returning the control of data to a more decentralized process. That is what blockchain movement to a large extent is about, and what the data structures that I'm building, in collaboration with people like Vitalik Buterin, are all about doing. Allowing data to live not on some giant platform that abstracts it and commoditizes it, but within the social relationships where it's initially generated. And I don't think I have the time to quite go into that, but we're doing a lot of work precisely on that topic, precisely how we return the control of data and how we use serious demonstrations of commitment and intent rather than just upvote, downvote, or other manipulations of people to allow the formation of clearer signals of value online. Why don't you ask one question?
Yeah,
and then
many.
Yeah.
I will, just one.
Yeah.
To put it bluntly, how do you finance infrastructure in a world of scattered communities, self-run, self-managed? Because, obviously, it's an absurd idea that each community should have its own telecom company.
Absolutely.
Or
100%.
run its own electric grid. So you said at the beginning that this is a model of not of diminishing marginal returns, but of increasing marginal returns. But to have prosperity, you need to have infrastructure.
Absolutely.
There are economies of scale.
No, 100%. Absolutely.
So how does
this is
square
Absolutely.
need with the model?
100%. My vision, remember, is not at all one of just small communities. It's one of emergent and responsive communities that respond to the nature of the economies of scale that exist. But look, there's a huge incentive for larger scale organization within this. If you double the number of people, you increase the funding by a factor of 4. So that creates huge incentives, not for small organization, but for large organization, when that's what people want and need and responds to their needs. So in fact, right now, we have this problem where either you have a monopoly, nobody wants, so they break it up, but then it's inefficiently small scale. This avoids that trade-off. It actually allows democratic governance to emerge at the scale that responds to the needs of the society and is not built around some arbitrary nation state that has to do it even if it's not the right level. So I think that's precisely what this vision is offering. It's offering the matching from a global level to allow the emergence of a variety of scales of development. And there have to be a variety of scales because even just basic transportation infrastructure, some things we walk to, some things we bike to, some things we take, there have to be governance at all those levels, and they emerge from the needs that people have. So that's the idea of the vision. Thank you.
Anyone else? Can I close now? Just the last one. Are you a man or a
No, we
woman?
can take it.
Yeah.
We can take it. We've had a good distribution. We've had a good distribution, I think, now. But I think the lady next to you had her hand up earlier in the white dress. So perhaps. No. Okay.
So my question is actually
on the mic, on no
so
microphone.
the question is basically you did the division between politics and economics there, and then you showed us that we should be moving towards a system that is a political economy.
Yeah.
But in theory, like the person that devolved economics is Adam Smith, and he was a political economist. So I wanted to see your view in how we emerged from a political economist and then moved into this complete separation.
Yeah.
And now this is where we're at.
Yeah, absolutely. Adam Smith, the 19th century political economists, all really had this broader view. What happened was that in the late 19th century, we discovered something called marginal utility. And the initial discoverers of this idea, the marginal revolutionaries, all understood the fact that economies of scale were the critical thing, and that sociology, which it corresponds to increasing returns, was critical. But then people tried to be more professional. They tried to be more mathematical. They tried to put the problems back in the box. And they did it by putting decreasing returns, by making everything individualistic, and by leaving everything else to sociology and political science. That was a fundamental sin. That was the beginning of the end of truly innovative political economy, and the beginning of the Cold War, where everything was communism versus capitalism. We have to get back. We have to put those things back together, and we need to evolve to real answers to those questions of increasing returns, which are what stood in the way of making that possible.
All right, I'll end up with a joke, if you
Please,
allow me.
please.
If you allow me. I have
Levity is what
I
we
have a very good friend who attended one of your lectures, I think yesterday in Rio, and he was impressed, but he told me that if the vision that Glenn has in mind materialize, we're going to have such a demanding and complex world to run that I would rather live in the Soviet Union. I don't subscribe to that view, but I think we need to discuss your ideas and at depth.
Yeah.
Right. They're very provocative. I know there's a lot in there, but I have to tell you that I'm not still convinced. And this doesn't matter, right? Because the important thing is that we have had a wonderful debate here. I would like to thank you for making
Thank you so much.
the time.